When the Trump administrations interviewed Mr. Driscoll for that role, they interrogated him about his political leanings and who he voted for in the last 5 elections. Questions Mr. Driscoll refused to answer because those types of questions impermissibly politicized the FBI. You also fired Steve Jensen, who served the FBI for nearly 2 decades and ran critical terrorism, counterintelligence, and organized crime operations, whom you once described as embodying what the American public demands of the FBI. But he was fired because he took part in investigating crimes committed on January 6th. And Trump's MAGA base lambasted you online for keeping him at the FBI. So he's no longer at the FBI.
They promised no politicization at the FBI, but under Kash Patel, that promise was shattered. Agents investigating Trump and his allies weren't just silenced, they were fired. This isn't law enforcement anymore. This is political enforcement.
At your confirmation hearing in January, you said under oath, and I quote, "There will be no politicization at the FBI. There will be no retributive actions taken by the FBI should I be confirmed." And in your written response to the Senate questionnaire, you said, I quote, "Personnel decisions shall be based on performance and adherence to the law, and every FBI employee will be held to the absolute same standard, and no one will be terminated for case assignments." So I want to just go through a couple of scenarios with you to get a sense of whether you think these are examples of politicization of the FBI or making decisions based on the performance and adherence to the law. So, first question. Would hiring FBI agents, analysts, and supervisors from only one political party being politicization of the FBI or making personnel decisions based on performance and adherence to the law?
We don't ask FBI people, applicants, where their political parties are.
Mr. Patel, do you ask FBI applicants who they voted for?
The FBI does not.
Are you aware that in the lawsuit that Mr. Driscoll filed against you and the FBI, he was asked who he voted for?
Since that lawsuit has been filed, that's ongoing litigation, I'm not able to comment.
Well, but it also means that you just said that what happened in his situation didn't happen. So we will go on to the next question. Let me ask you an even easier one. Does firing agents for working on the cases that they were assigned to and that the president didn't like, is that politicization of the FBI or making personnel decisions based on performance and adherence to the law?
The FBI doesn't terminate anyone based on case assignments alone.
Has the FBI ever been sued by somebody who felt that they were terminated based on case assignments?
In the entire history of the FBI, I'm sure they have.
No, since your tenure.
I'm sure there's ongoing litigation.
Yes. In fact, there is ongoing litigation. And in fact, people have been asked who they voted for. And in fact, you are running an FBI for the President of the United States rather than the people of the United States, because my questions were not hypotheticals. They are the things you have done during your tenure. And according to a lawsuit filed last week by long-term FBI agents, you fired former acting director Brian Driscoll. He had served with the Bureau for nearly 20 years, earned a Medal of Honor, Medal of Valor for bravery during the dangerous ISIS raid, and had a wealth of crisis response experience and led the FBI's critical incident response group. When the Trump administrations interviewed Mr. Driscoll for that role, they interrogated him about his political leanings and who he voted for in the last 5 elections. Questions Mr. Driscoll refused to answer because those types of questions impermissibly politicized the FBI. You also fired Steve Jensen, who served the FBI for nearly 2 decades and ran critical terrorism, counterintelligence, and organized crime operations, whom you once described as embodying what the American public demands of the FBI. But he was fired because he took part in investigating crimes committed on January 6th. And Trump's MAGA base lambasted you online for keeping him at the FBI. So he's no longer at the FBI. You also fired a decorated combat veteran with decades of experience in the Bureau, Special Agent Walter Jardia, because he worked on the investigation into the Russian interference in the 2016 presidential election and helped investigate Trump's ally, Peter Navarro. Director Patel, it is very clear that you have flunked your own test. You've put saving your job, which I actually believe you were being honest about during your confirmation hearings, over doing what's right for the FBI and the American people. That is not adherence to the law. Thank you, and I yield back.
Time for the gentleladies.
What you just witnessed is more than just a tense exchange in a congressional hearing. It's a rare moment of real accountability inside the halls of power. Representative Deborah Ross didn't just confront FBI Director Kash Patel, she documented his contradictions and held him to the promises he made under oath. At his confirmation hearing, Patel swore there would be no politicization of the FBI, that decisions wouldn't be made based on loyalty or ideology, but on merit and law. Those words sounded noble then, but now, months later, the receipts tell a different story. Ross methodically exposes how the Bureau, under Patel's leadership, appears to have drifted from being an independent investigative institution to something far more troubling, a political weapon. She reminds Patel, and everyone watching, that the FBI was never meant to serve a president's interests. It was designed to serve the American people. Let's pause on that, because this point is crucial. The independence of the FBI has been one of the core pillars of American democracy for nearly a century. The moment that independence erodes, the moment political loyalty becomes a factor in who gets hired, fired, or investigated, is the moment the rule of law gives way to rule by fear. And what Ross lays out here isn't just hypothetical. She details actual cases, long-serving FBI agents, decorated veterans, and counterterrorism experts who were allegedly dismissed for doing their jobs, for investigating the wrong people, for refusing to play political games. Think about what that means. If even the people inside the FBI can't speak truth to power without risking their careers, what hope does an ordinary citizen have? Ross's tone here matters too. She's not grandstanding. She's surgical, calm but fierce. She's walking Patel, and by extension, the public, through a paper trail that shows how this new brand of leadership inside federal institutions threatens the foundation of fairness and impartial justice. And Patel's evasiveness only makes it worse. Instead of owning up or addressing the serious ethical questions raised, he deflects behind ongoing litigation, as if accountability can be postponed indefinitely. But it can't, not when the stakes are this high. Because let's be real, when political interference reaches the top of law enforcement, the danger isn't just bureaucratic, it's existential. A politicized FBI doesn't protect democracy, it polices it. It becomes an arm of whoever holds power rather than a check on that power. And once that line is crossed, it's incredibly hard to pull back. This is why hearings like this matter. This is why it's so important that people like Rep. Deborah Ross use their platform to drag truth into daylight. Because for too long, the erosion of independence in key institutions has happened quietly, behind closed doors, under the cover of legal jargon. What Ross does here is pull the curtain back and say, no more. She's not just speaking for the agents who were fired. She's speaking for the very idea that no one, not even a president, should be above accountability. And that message hits especially hard right now, in an era where truth itself feels negotiable. The irony? The same people who once claimed to back the blue now appear to be backing the politicization of blue institutions, so long as it benefits their side. That's the danger of selective patriotism, and Ross calls it out plainly, without fear, without political theater, just facts, names, and consequences. If there's one takeaway from this hearing, it's this. When law enforcement becomes a political weapon, justice becomes a casualty. And Deborah Ross just gave America a much-needed reminder of why accountability can't be optional. Because democracy only works when truth still matters, and when those who swear to protect it are willing to stand up, even when it's uncomfortable. So let's keep that conversation going. Drop your thoughts below. Do you think Patel has politicized the FBI under his leadership? Or do you think this is just partisan spin? Let's hear your perspective. And if you believe, like we do, that truth and accountability should never depend on party lines, make sure you hit subscribe and stay tuned, because this fight for impartial justice, for institutional integrity, is far from over.